Hi, I'm Dr. B, and today's lecture is about consumer culture. I'm starting this with a case study of the diamond industry because I think it's one of the clearest examples that you may have from your personal experience or what might become your personal experience about the influence of consumer culture on your life. So you can see I ask the question whether or not diamonds are forever, and I'm also suggesting that the only value that we ever attribute to things is symbolic, including the value that we attribute to things like diamonds, cars, and a lot of other things. Now, a car can get you to work, so it's intrinsically valuable to you in that way. But a diamond has mostly social value and some industrial value, and we end up spending thousands of dollars on them because of the social value and not because of what kind of utility it serves for us as a society. Now, in the 19th century and previously, diamonds were worn by members of the elite or ruling classes, but they were pretty unpopular for regular folks. That started to change after what ended up becoming De Beers hit a whole bunch of diamond mines in South Africa. Very famously, in 1866, the Eureka diamond was discovered, and after that, there was pretty aggressive mining in South Africa in particular, and a lot of new diamonds were hitting the market, and there were some shady business dealings and the formation of what amounted to a monopoly eventually. So one supplier had pretty much all of the world's diamonds and was able to set the price as it wished. So that's the Eureka diamond there, and you can see it was really huge when it was originally found, and it was later reduced in size. So De Beers became a monopoly early on, and this was intentional to engage in price fixing. And because of antitrust laws in the United States, some of what De Beers was up to was prohibited, and some of the advertising that eventually came out from De Beers about diamonds couldn't use the De Beers name, couldn't show diamond jewelry, and had to be a little bit imaginative with how they went about selling the diamonds. But that only happened after De Beers had the stroke of genius to hire an expert advertising company and get that symbolic and social value attached to the diamonds. Today, De Beers has about 1/3 of the world's supply, and there is still stockpiling of these precious gems to make sure that their value stays high, because the more readily available something is, the less money people have to charge for it. Okay, so in the 1920s and 1940s, because of the Great Depression and because of World War I, it was harder to sell diamonds. So there was a new market for it at the beginning of the 20th century, but still not that many newly engaged people were wearing diamonds. And De Beers looked over and saw the United States not yet engaging in World War II type activities and said, the United States might be a pretty good investment. Let's focus all of our attention there to see if we can get U.S. couples to start buying diamond engagement rings. They could have lowered the price to keep selling them, but they refused to do that because of fear of loss of prestige. So instead, we see a situation where newly engaged couples are targeted, and diamonds are no longer an indulgence of the ultra wealthy, but rather something that couples need in order to be really engaged, which isn't true, but it became a very powerful social myth that people needed a diamond in order to be engaged. So because of these antitrust laws, De Beers decided that it would pay for the advertisement of diamonds in general, even though De Beers diamonds specifically were not marketed. So De Beers didn't show up in its own ads for a while. In the 1940s, the advertising agency Ayers and Company was hired, and Frances Garrity is the person who came up with the tagline for diamonds, that diamonds are forever. Her ads were really emotional and kind of sappy, and they created this firm, romantic connotation with diamonds and engagement. Sometimes her ads were a little heavy-handed or too romantic, but nevertheless, she got the job done. She was right for the time period, and largely because of Frances Garrity's tagline that diamonds are forever, we do see diamonds becoming this socially valuable thing, even though they don't have intrinsic value. Alongside Frances Garrity and her efforts in her advertising company, Dorothy Dignam also wrote like gossip columns talking about what diamonds celebrities were giving one another when they got married. And the idea was that the big ones sold the little ones, and we also started seeing diamonds come up on the red carpet to instill the idea that to be famous, to be glamorous, to have that sort of magic that celebrities have, regular women need diamonds smaller than the ones that celebrities have, but still some kind of acknowledgement of a relationship with that diamond. So, in addition to the stroke of genius of creating that very strong relationship between diamonds and romantic relationships, there were other clever marketing tricks that the diamond industry used to make sure that diamonds kept their value and that newly engaged couples kept feeling it was really necessary to buy that diamond in order to be really, really engaged. And I should expose myself as a little bit of a hypocrite for this class period because I just got engaged, and guess what? I got a diamond. Why? Because social value is real and it's important. So even though we've all been manipulated into giving diamonds the value that they have, social value is real and it really matters. So it's okay to want what you want, but I think that this is still a good example of why consumer culture is our culture. Consumerism and materialism are parts of our culture and parts of who we are, and they get to us at our most intimate levels, even in people who perhaps would be viewed as hypocrites for going along with it. So anyhow, I'm exposing myself as a guess a diamond enthusiast in spite of all the criticisms that I'm levying against it. So it's okay for you to have this kind of dissonance as well, because that's part of understanding consumer culture. But anyway, that's an aside. Some of the other innovations that the diamond industry has come up with include the 4 C's. So teaching people this extra language and extra skill of assessing diamonds based on their cut, color, and clarity, as well as the carat size. Things like telling people that 2 months' salary is the right price to pay for this object that loses value the second it leaves the store. And then also there's the element of surprise. So research indicates that when we've got heterosexual, like cis normative couples who are going and getting engaged, it tends to be the case that a woman talks a man out of making an impulse buy, and a woman talks a man into spending less money or spending money on a new appliance or a down payment for a house instead of this object that's just a status symbol. And if men are left to their own devices and buy something by surprise, they're likelier in these cis hetero relationships to spend a lot more money if the woman isn't there. So that's a little bit concerning for other reasons that go beyond the scope of this lecture. So here's the example of 2 months' salary being the right price to pay to give your new fiance a hint at what life together is going to be like and how you'll provide for them. And then it's worth noting that although the United States is famous as one of the biggest and most, hungry, one of the biggest and hungriest consumer cultures on the planet currently, global capitalism is also a phenomenon, and the diamond industry is reaching out and finding new markets because it's already pretty well saturated and pretty safe to assume it will continue making money in the US market. So in Japan in the 1960s, we have the diamond industry approaching new couples there, and in the course of 50 years and change, 5%, we went from 5% of newly engaged Japanese women wearing diamond rings to 60% of them wearing diamond rings. So that's a huge, huge, huge jump, and marketing is to blame or thank for that, particularly when these marriages were trying to adopt or accept more Western values after the opening of Japan after World War II. China is a new market where we're seeing a lot of new couples being approached to embrace this sort of Western aesthetic and the Western ideals that accompany marriage, including the engagement ring. So it's a marketing move for De Beers to try and approach these Asian markets and encourage diamond consumption there too. Starting about a decade ago, so in the last decade, newly engaged couples in the United States, we saw 75% of US brides wearing engagement rings, Americans spending $7 billion on engagement rings in 2012. The average cost of these babies is $4,000, which is a lot of money. And De Beers is still controlling 1/3 of the diamond market. So, just as a heads up, if you were making $30,000 per year, your average take home pay per month would be close to $2,000. And that would put you in the zone of buying what the average ring costs. But if you make $30,000 a year and you spend $4,000 on an object, like, you're taking food from your own mouth when you do that. So it's probably not at all prudent, never prudent, to spend 2 months of your salary on an object. And that's just one of many, many, many critiques that people levy against the diamond industry. So, of course, there are exploitative labor practices and diamond mining happening in sometimes conflict zones, sometimes instigating the conflicts in those zones. Following the Blood Diamond movie, people have become more sensitive about sourcing where their rocks are coming from. And people are more aware of the fact that the desire for diamonds was created by marketers. These things are overpriced, they're sold by too few sellers, the sellers manipulate prices. All of these factors are parts of the critiques that we can justly levy against the diamond industry. They're an emblem of consumerism, and they aren't rare. And if they were sold fairly and for industrial purposes instead of for jewelry, it would be about $35 a carat. So diamonds aren't an investment either. They lose money the second they leave the store, and they're almost impossible to resell because no one wants a used engagement ring, right? That's kind of either morbid or cursed, is the impression that people have about them. So if you want to look at these lecture slides on your own time, you can find links to some fun videos showing you examples of ads with diamonds, some of the most famous ones. And I've got some further examples here. So this is one of the Francis Garrity type ads for diamonds, and you see De Beers isn't listed here, and we don't even have jewelry present in the ad. And there's very, very sappy language on the side. We've got another one, sappy language on the side, no jewelry clearly visible, although you can see that the woman's got a glimmer around her neck, and so perhaps this is starting to bend those rules. De Beers perhaps starting to be allowed to show diamond jewelry. Here we have a man holding on to diamond jewelry, so again, it looks like we've got things easing up, but De Beers is not present, or at least hardly present in this ad. And this is trying to encourage spending on diamonds for things past the engagement ring. So a diamond for the anniversary, a diamond for special moments in life, a birthday, a debut, the birth of a child, any significant event, throw a rock on it. And I am going to bother to show you this one because this is a very, very, very famous diamond commercial that I remember from my childhood.